Hello, Void. Vivius is back and at it again, I guess. So, it's alive. Okay. 1973. Um, Very odd movie. So, It's Alive is a cult classic written and directed, well, produced by Larry Cohen, who's behind a couple other famous horror films as well as quite a few other films. Is involved with the 2006 Captivity, the Maniac Cop series, all the sequels to this one, and several others. And he also was spotlighted on Masters of Horror at one point. So, I had never seen this one before today, and I know it's kind of got a cult status, and with two sequels under its belt, it must have been doing something right. And but I've been aware of this movie since, oh, pretty much forever. Now, many years ago, when I was young, don't remember how young, but a lot of stars that start like this. I when actually when the paper came with an actual paper copy of TV guides, I would always with a movie section in back that I'd always just stroll through, read for movies that I'd be interested in, usually on channels that I didn't have. But I always kind of kept a few notes or movies in mind that I'd been meaning to see. And one of them that I often saw was It's Alive. Horror films and monster movies were something I always kind of looked for, and well, they were what mostly caught my eye. Mostly I was looking for Godzilla movies that I hadn't seen, because this was before the internet, and I didn't know how many of them there were, so I was trying to track them all down. But It's Alive appeared more than once, and just the descriptor of a monster baby kind of stuck with me. In a local video store, while I did have a copy of this one, that was at the time I was kind of before actually seeing a lot of these films, and I didn't just assume most likely my parents wouldn't have let me. But I found out recently that this one was actually rated PG. That said, it's 70s PG, which is definitely a lot more than PG by today's standards. This one is probably a strong PG-13 for blood alone, as well as content, I guess. But it's just a movie that's been on my radar, but I either forget about or there wasn't a copy on hand. But finally found one, picked it up, got around to it. So, was it worth the wait? Eh? Okay, so the plot of this movie. And this one, I will appreciate how much it jumps right in. There's a couple, the Davis family, that are expecting a baby, like you do. Now they already have a son, but he's not in the movie for very much. He's staying with a friend while they go to the delivery, and pretty much the movie picks up with them waking up in the middle of the night. Honey, it's time. Oh, okay, we're getting right into this. I mean, I knew this was about Monster Baby, but I thought have a little build up. No, we're going. And first, I will say, wow, this movie is 70s as hell. Between the outfits and the locations, I'm pretty sure this one has one of the most 70s looking walls I've ever seen in a movie. Wow. Okay, that aside. It goes straight into it, and then, well, everything seems like it's going to be fine, but there's a complication with the delivery that leads to 5 doctors dead and the baby missing. Now, I was kind of imagining that they'd have to be taking home this child and having to try to figure out how to deal with it, but no, it's monster baby on the loose. And the movie very much goes from there as bodies keep piling up as the baby apparently is on its own doing okay. And the family, who's now become infamous for their monster baby, and having to deal with the fallout from that, from medical people trying to want to get a hold of then researchers wanting to want the remains of the baby to study how this happened, to some food and drug companies like want to make sure it gets completely destroyed because we don't want to be liable for any of our. Since we don't know what made the baby, we don't want it to come back that our products made this baby possible. So it's an interesting take on kind of consumerism, medicine, and well, environmental regulations, I suppose. And did a lot more of that than I was expecting. And as it goes, the baby tries to get back to its parents to be protected and seems to more lash out when it feels threatened. And it goes from there with the cops and its father included trying to hunt it down because the father is trying to distance itself from it. But well, there we go. So this is a very bleak movie. I will say that there's very little in terms of comic relief, and it jumps right in, and you see this family being torn apart by this event. It's how much a strange event like this can destroy a family, especially once the media won't leave them alone, and it starts affecting their personal lives and their jobs, as everyone knows them as the family of a monster baby. I wasn't expecting that sort of an angle. It was interesting, but my god, this movie is a slow burn, though. Especially towards the beginning. It crawls about as fast as the baby. I mean, towards the end, it does pick up, but it's a long way to get there. The acting actually is really good. You believe the two parents in particular for what they're going through is really it's an intense situation, and they both portray it well. Between the mother kind of having a bit of a breakdown, and the father going complete opposite and shutting down the own all emotional connection to this would-be child and determined to remove it to protect his family. Their performances are great, as well as some of the policemen that are trying to work around this. I mean, their son is a kid actor, and he's not the greatest, but they don't do much with him anyway. So he's not in it for very much, so he didn't detract really for me. And the effects of the monster baby they're okay. I mean, they're not the greatest, but they keep it hidden and don't show it too much. But they show it just enough for you to get a good idea without bringing it completely in and ruining it. They leave enough mysterious. So I do like how the baby was shot. And when you get some, from the baby's perspective, they do this weird dual vision sort of thing, which was interesting. It's a little weird when you suddenly still are in that when you flip to seeing the baby, but I digress. So the effects are fine, the acting is good, but it is a little bit of a slog. It's definitely a dark movie, and though it's an interesting one, it is trying to have more of a message than just being a cheesy monster movie. Now, I know its two sequels might go a little bit more into that, but as this seems to be sort of the first of what appears to be going to be an epidemic, so as more babies might be born, like it. Well, I'm going to give this one a 3 MacGuffins. I mean, it wasn't a standout movie, but it was trying to do something more than just being a run-of-the-mill creature feature. Though, the pacing and pacing does detract from it a bit, and the atmosphere, it's kind of hard to describe. I mean, it's good to have that it was as bleak as it was, but because it was so devoid of any sort of releases in terms of any sort of comedic beats and a lot of the ills weren't like shocking or scary, so you don't get a break from it in that regard. It can be a little hard to sit through at times. I mean, I like that part of the atmosphere, but it needs a little bit of some breathing room. I think it gets more than to the third one, where it's pretty much a whole island of these babies. But overall, it's still worth a 3. It's worth seeing, definitely, and it's interesting. I can see why it's became a cult classic, but it didn't give enough for me to elevate it beyond that. But it's far from a bad film. I do see why it's got some sequels and got some attention. But I'm probably not going to watch this one very much, but I am glad to have finally have seen it and glad it's now in my collection. Okay, all for today, but it's live. If it sounds like it's your thing, check it out, but just be warned that it's not a baby rampage as much as it might be trying to bill itself as. It's more about the how that impacts the family than murder baby. So take that with a grain of salt, but give it a watch if it sounds like it's your thing. If not, you're not going to miss too much by avoiding this one. It's not worth hunting down if you're not a diehard genre fan. Yeah. Take care, everybody.